With guns blazing and jazz music blaring, Cowboy Bebop is one of the most iconic animes of the 90s, often considered one of the best ever made. In a delightfully dark future where bounty hunting is encouraged, felons run rampant amongst the stars. With ships full of cowboys, the Red Dragon Syndicate, and war veterans, good and evil pass through the star systems.
Go ahead and run. How far do you think you'll get?
There are certainly more than a few characters we love to watch fight crime and cause it. In a galaxy crowded with all stages of morality, who lives a life of justice and who carries the biggest bounty over their head? Let's board the Bebop and find out. I'm Kyle with Wicked Binge, and this is Cowboy Bebop Good to Evil. Starting off with the most good, a man with no bounty over his head, we have Laughing Bull, an indigenous man who makes an earnest living giving advice to the crew of the Bebop, as well as taking care of his son.
The swimming bird will meet a woman. The bird will be hunted by this woman.
Laughing Bull is always somehow correct, although his unfamiliar terms can make his predictions a bit difficult to understand. He even rescued Spike after his fight with Vincent, pulling him from the river and taking him home to tend to his wounds. Being a spiritual man, he cares greatly for those that surround him and shares a great respect for all living beings. With his kindness and compassion for the crew, it's earned him our gold medal for most good character in Cowboy Bebop, and our silver medal for good goes to Anastasia. Known as Annie to a few, she's a simple woman, keeping her convenience store in stock and chasing off the occasional thief. Annie's an old friend to Spike, helping him out greatly every time that he visits her store. Even after not seeing Spike for years, presumably dead, he shows up out of the blue like a true blast from the past.
But I'm alive.
No, you're not. You died 3 years ago.
And without many questions, she's completely willing to give him all the information he needs, as well as material goods straight out of her personal stock. Even after her store is ambushed by men from the Syndicate, armed and searching for Spike and Julia, she conceals any information she can, simply stating that he's dead. Although this is one of her final statements before she passes, it speaks volumes to her loyalty and belief in Spike. And on that note about loyalty, who's more loyal than everyone's favorite galactic pooch, Ein? Although he's just a pup, he's certainly not last in intelligence on the Bebop. This boy has been through a lot, from being experimented on in a laboratory to being shoved into a briefcase for some quick cash. Nothing has been able to keep Ein down. He assisted in the capture of Hakim, was the first on the Bebop to notice the fridge monster, and even helped Jet hack into the Brain Dream for information. Not to mention he's capable of steering vehicles, answering telephones, and communicating with other animals. Who's a good boy? Next up is a trucker with a kitty companion, Victoria Terpsichore. She's not just a bounty hunter's wife, VT is a hardworking, compassionate woman with a slight distaste for bounty hunters.
Bounty hunters must be the lowest form of life there is.
But for good reason, since her husband's dangerous career did cause his death. VT only shows up for a single episode, but she manages to leave a pretty good impression regardless. After a few staggering bounty hunters harassed the waitress, Muriel, Victoria was the only one in the entire bar that helped her out. She also assisted in the attempted capture of the criminal Decker, although this did end up accidentally killing him. Victoria also saved Spike after his floating act, opening her ship to help him back into the safety of gravity, showing that even if she doesn't like you, she'll still be willing to help you out in your time of need.
You're just a messed up loser, Spike.
Next up is the trio, Jobim, Carlos, and Antonio. Essential recurring characters in the Bebop franchise, from playing cards in Tijuana, to surviving bar fights, and gambling on spiders from Mars. These three never fail to liven things up. They may not do anything noteworthy, but they are pretty kind. They even checked on Shaft during one of their lunches, as they saw him sadly eating alone. Despite asking to be left by himself, he attempted to eat his ice cream too fast and got a brain freeze. One of the men even offered him a mushroom to help ease the pain. They even helped Jet by flying one of the planes to distribute the anti-nanobot vaccines, earning the trio a spot in the good end of our list. Following the Three Musketeers is the famous television duo Punch and Judy. The two of them are bubbly personalities offering intel for bounty hunters out looking for jobs.
Hi, amigos! Welcome, bounty
bounty hunters!
They may storm off the set after their show is cancelled, but we can't help but feel it's a valid reaction as their show simply ended without letting them know beforehand. Next up is a woman with a short criminal history, Julia. The former lover of Vicious and current love interest of Spike, her greatest crime was falling in love. She broke the code with Spike after attempting to elope, falling for him after she nursed him back to health in the comfort of her apartment. Even as she was told to shoot him, she held the gun up to him but couldn't bring herself to pull the trigger.
I'll be with you until the end.
A truly tragic story, the two ran away together but were separated. Even if she's not an evil character, she did cheat on her boyfriend with his best friend, and that's just a bit cold, especially considering it was a catalyst to turn him into the vicious man that he is today. Next up is another crew member of the Bebop, Jet Black. He's a scary looking guy at first, with a bionic arm and a metal scar just below his eye, but surprisingly, he has a bit of a heart of gold.
No, just wandering around with some weirdos.
He's the one keeping the Bebop under control, making sure everyone is fed, taking care of Ein, treating Spike's wounds, and becoming a father figure to Ed. Hell, the guy even has a place on the ship for his bonsai trees, which he cares for very delicately. Jet's the pilot, the muscle, and the repairman, fixing the shower at Faye's request. And he's always a guy you can count on.
I get it, Faye. I promise I'll fix the shower.
Even his past relationship with Elisa wasn't filled with a lot of drama. Just one of those things that didn't work out. The only reason why Jet Black is further down the list is because of the job. While it is legal, it isn't exactly the most morally sound job. Considering the danger it tends to put civilians and the surroundings in. While he's certainly more cautious than Spike, we can't forget his alias, Black Dog, as in the dog that bites its prey and never lets go.
The black dog who bites once and then never lets go.
Next, we have the ISSP worker, Bob. Bob is a pretty simple guy with a simple job, keeping watch of things while looking at the occasional dirty magazine. He's far from evil. As soon as he heard that the Red Dragon Syndicate was eliminating all those connected to Vicious, he was the first to give Jet a call, telling him to watch out for Spike.
Leave Mars and do it fast.
He may not have been the most important character, but his efforts haven't gone unnoticed. On to the next member of the Bebop crew, Ed. She's a highly intelligent hacker with childish tendencies, although she does have an excuse, being a child herself. She tends to use her expertise with technology to her advantage, but she does have her moments where she's of great help to the Bebop crew. More than a few of them, being as she is the only tech-savvy one other than Ein. Ed is genuinely caring towards others, treating them as if they're her own family, even taking pity on a satellite and naming it MPU.
What if I call you MPU?
But although she's compassionate towards them, that doesn't mean that she doesn't put herself first. She's a bit lazy, usually thinks with her stomach before her head, and even uses her crewmates as a bit of an experiment at times, such as when she fed the crew mushrooms to see if they were safe to eat, causing them to trip out of their minds.
This here is the stairway to heaven. You know that, don't you?
She's certainly smart, but her self-importance gets ahead of her sometimes. Next up is Rocco Bonaro. A criminal motivated by his love for his sister, Stella, he has good morals, but with no way to support Stella's healing process, he's forced to turn to a life of petty crime, usually pickpocketing, until he gets mixed into a very expensive yet dangerous drug business for the Grey Ash plant.
Venus has a lot of helium in the atmosphere. You can fix it with these little popper pills.
Regardless of this, he takes care of Stella, making sure she's well fed and even sending her little gifts such as a music box.
Rocco has a good heart.
Eventually, this shady business does cause his demise, getting captured by Calvino. He's forced to bring Spike back into danger.
So, little Rocco.
Rocco does attempt to protect Spike from them, giving him time to run by distracting them, but he's shot in the back by another thug.
Get out of here quick or they're gonna kill you!
While Rocco does have good morals and a genuine heart, his criminal background pushes him down our list just a bit. Finally, we have our protagonist, Spike Spiegel. He's certainly a complex character, to say the least. A bit of an anti-hero, if you will.
I'm not dead, how about that?
Spike is reckless, with a pretty big disregard for his surroundings, including property and civilians, even if he doesn't mean to, sometimes. He tends to not care how the job is done as long as it's finished and the bounty is properly collected.
Well, can I ask something before we do all that?
Spike tends to talk about how he doesn't care about others, but genuinely, his actions seem to challenge his words. When others are in danger in front of him, he does all he can do to protect them, or at least call the ambulance afterwards. Such is the case with Rocco, Gren, and Annie. Even when he states he only cares about the money, in a few cases where he's had the opportunity to take more, he's declined. Such as when Victoria offers him a wad of cash for guessing her name right, and he takes a single bill and tells her to keep the rest for her husband. The truth is, he genuinely cares about his crew, yes, even Faye, and has gone out to rescue her multiple times. While he acts like a cowboy with a hardened exterior, there is no argument that Spike is a genuinely caring person, willing to help others out in a pinch. He's a guy who likes to keep his feelings to himself, and honestly, we respect that. Next up, we have the mentor of Spike and Vicious, Mao. He's the leader of the syndicate who, in the past, cared for both of his apprentices. But after a change of circumstances and a wrongfully placed bounty, anything could be possible. After Vicious attacked the Red Dragon Syndicate and Carlos' death was placed over his head, he was forced to lay low for a while. And while Mao on screen has never done anything particularly evil, he's never done anything particularly good either. Now, our first of many veterans on the list, Gren Eckener. He was a partner to Vicious during the war and was even entrusted with his music box. The two of them were supposedly inseparable during the war, but immediately after, he was tried for being a spy and served 3 years in prison, which left him with a lot of stale anger for his ex-comrade.
You see, that's what we were at Titan. We were all comrades.
He met with Vicious and attempted to kill him, which he fired upon his colleague, Lin, killing him instantly. While his frustration and need for revenge were justified, he still murdered a misguided man. Despite this, Gren was not a bad person. He was a musician and a kind man who even helped Faye escape a group of men trying to harm her, and gave her a place to stay for the night. Plus, he had one of the best funerals, if you can call it that, in the series, being placed in a ship by Spike and quietly drifting into space. Next, we have Shin, Lin's brother. He wasn't an avid follower as his brother, deciding to help Julia and Spike escape the Syndicate. He left a message for Julia, warning her about the Syndicate's plans, even going as far as to inform Spike in person about their dangerous situation and Julia's location.
And you're a target now too. So's Julia.
Shin even held off the other Syndicate members as Spike and Jet escaped. While he was still a hidden member of the Syndicate for a while, blending in amongst them while taking information, he helped Spike from the inside. While his past may be a bit checkered, Shin helped the crew of the Bebop up until the bitter end. Moving into another territory altogether, we have the Chessmaster Hex. While in the series, he was depicted as senile and confused, despite having such a large bounty over his head. His reasoning for giving out the design defects for the Gate Corporation was because the company had essentially stolen his design and fired him, which made him furious. In his youth, he may have had more plans for the hijacking, but his chess match with Ed was simply too heartwarming to be considered evil. Now, while she's a bit low on the list, we're sure you'll see why. Next up is Faye Valentine. She's a gambler, a bit lazy, seduces men for her own benefit, and is opportunistic.
Virtual fun doesn't really turn me on.
Now, she's definitely still a good character, but she's collected so much debt, it's almost as if she lives in modern America. Faye cares more about herself than everyone else on the Bebop, even going as far as eating Ein's dog food and telling him to fend for himself when the fridge is empty.
If you don't work, you don't eat. You're a hunting dog. Hunt up some food.
In multiple instances, she's sabotaged the Bebop, stolen money, and left without another word. But more often than not, she always returns home. Despite her slothfulness and greed, she cares deeply for the others, and Spike specifically. This is shown best when Spike leaves the Bebop for the last time, just before returning to the past and fighting Vicious. She tries her best to get him to stay, showing her concern in the way she knows how, by drawing her gun and threatening to shoot him as he leaves. In her own weird way, she does care, but with her abandonment issues, it makes it very difficult for her to admit it.
Oh God, men are such babies.
Next up, we have the scientist, commonly known as Rashid. He's an intelligent man, a leader in nanomachinery, and one of the most foremost experts. He was a member of the military's research and development branch while he worked to develop his nanomachinery to be used as a type of virus, a weapon for the military.
Vincent was a test subject.
He soon realized that the consequences for this virus would be too great, so he attempted to cover what he could by vaccinating Vincent, deleting all the data that he could and escaping.
I don't know what Vincent's purpose is.
It's a prime example of a good person's research being used for terrible things, and while he came to realize the ramifications of his actions, it was too late for it to be taken back. Moving on, we have Elektra Overoa. She's an interesting character herself, a former member of the army and partner of Volaju. The two were quite fond of each other until the experiments began to mess with his mind and eventually reclaimed any memories of her.
He looked at me like he'd never known me.
Although she loved him dearly, she realized he was a danger to the world and himself. So she decided to do what was best and team up with the crew of the Bebop to spread the vaccine over the city, ultimately saving them. Elektra also had a difficult decision to make while her gun was trained on her lover. Decidedly, she shot him in order to save the others, which ended up killing him, but he finally remembered who she was.
I remembered.
She's a good person who loved a man who was slowly losing himself, and despite her kill count, it was clearly for good reason. Up next, we have the closest thing to a literal cowboy, Andy. With his tassels and hat, he couldn't possibly be untrustworthy, right? Wrong. Very, very wrong.
And boy, what a rush.
Unlike most bounty hunters, Andy is filthy rich, not to mention stubborn, egocentric, and very incompetent. He has the recklessness of Spike tenfold, but with even less charm. He met with Spike to attempt to take out the Teddy Bomber, which ended up serving as a distraction for the bomber to escape, and destroying a good portion of a building. Not only does he do this once, but twice, and nearly a third time where he almost shoots Spike due to his jealous and irresponsible nature. Not to mention the guy brings a horse everywhere he goes. Up a flight of stairs, elevators, random buildings. Seriously, with as incompetent as the guy is, how well do you think he cares for his pets? Now behind that oddball, we have Lin. He's a former member of the Red Crime Syndicate and follower of Vicious. While he's extremely loyal and selfless, he totally sided with the wrong guy here.
Vicious, look out!
Lin is definitely a sheep, which isn't a good thing. He blocks Vicious from bullets twice on screen, including the bullet fired by Gren, which kills him. Now Lin isn't really the worst bad guy, but he's definitely on the wrong side of history here. Moving on to the Teddy Bomber himself, Ted Bauer. He was a self-proclaimed activist, warning the general public about the dangers of unchecked capitalism. He sets out to destroy all symbols of this, but never gets very far in explaining himself. Plus, the guy does say he has made no attempt to target human lives, which is relatively better than some of the lower people on the list, even if he does attempt to kill Spike and Andy for interrupting his message. And he dresses up like a fluffy teddy bear. All his bombs are just as cuddly too. Well, up until they, explode. After that teddy bear, we've got a guy that's not as keen on cuddles, Mad Pyro. Now, he's certainly done some terrible things. To preface, he shares a similar story to a lot of morally gray characters on the list. He was held by a government facility and experimented on, which in turn caused him to gain a lot of magical abilities. Things like flight, super strength, super speed, and even his own personal shield. However, his mind was completely destroyed by these experiments, making him very literally mad. He lost a lot of function and in turn had little to no empathy for others, just pure unbridled rage towards the scientists that had turned him into a monster. In fact, he slaughtered all the scientists and staff members present during his escape and planned to continue on his killing spree afterward.
I journeyed here in order to take your lives.
He even tried to kill Spike for trying to stop him. But at this point, who hasn't tried to kill Spike? The only downfall was the man's PTSD regarding cats, which made him insatiable to try and stop destroying whatever was meowing. Even though he was a bad guy, there were multiple steps taken by the scientists that made him as bad as he is. Torture did quite the number on this guy. Next up, we have Lee Sampson. He's not entirely memorable on his own, but he was an accomplice to Vincent who worked as a hacker. Vincent basically said to the kid, "Hey, want to become a terrorist?" And he just went with it. No torture required. He also essentially worked as an escape driver for Vincent, as well as hacked along the way. He may have been impressionable, but there is nothing really good about him. Vincent betrayed and killed him anyway, so it goes to show how easy to trust people are in Cowboy Bebop. How do we follow up Samson? Well, by the very man that captured Ayn, of course. Abdul Hakim is a serial pet thief who is planning to sell our precious pooch for some quick cash. He's also done a few other petty things, showing he's simply a bad guy. He received plastic surgery and immediately decked his doctor, not paying and running out the door, as well as pushing 2 fishing kids onto the ground after asking them for the time.
What time is it?
That's right, Abdul steals pets and pushes children. Horrendous. Next up is the very man whose name is sprinkled all upon this list, Vincent. Sharing something in common with Periot, he was a veteran and, you guessed it, the victim of an experimental military project. He was injected with nanomachines, which attacked his brain and nervous system, nearly killing him, if not for Rashid, who attempted to vaccinate him. Luckily, it worked and he was saved, but at the cost of all of his memories. Losing his sense of self motivated him to devise a horrible plan to release the nanomachines onto everyone in Alba City. He killed his accomplice, Samson, and a few other civilians, not to mention an entire train of people, as well as nearly killing Spike. As usual, it happens quite often. He was an evil man, surely, but he was extremely mentally ill due to the experiments done on him, which gives him more of a what-if situation. What if he had never been experimented on? Well, this probably would have never happened, considering that his mind was so diluted, he couldn't distinguish dreams from reality. The real moral of the story is to stop experimenting on people. It makes them deluded and it kills hundreds. Finally, we're getting into some true villainous territory despite having only 2 characters left. As our runner-up, we have Maria Murdoch. She's the leader of an eco-terrorist organization, the Space Warriors, who have a very deep affinity for animals. Essentially PETA, but futuristic and twice as radical.
Attention, we the Space Warriors are eco-soldiers.
They believe that humans have no right interfering with nature, which is a mildly fair point to make if she didn't plan to infect the moon of Ganymede with a genetic-altering virus. She held these experiments on her own associates, who for some reason call her their mama, which means that she was genuinely turning her own children into apes. That's pretty awful.
Harrison, you'll get your punishment later when I return.
And finally, we have the character who gets the gold medal for most evil in all of Cowboy Bebop. Surprising to no one, it's Vicious. He was a member of the Red Dragon crime syndicate before betraying them, and is also a veteran of the Titan War. Despite being friends with Spike for so long, his comrade decides to run off with his girlfriend, which essentially set him off on a long-winded crime spree. He framed his mentor, Mao, for the death of Carlos, killed all of Mao's men, and then killed Mao himself. He trapped Faye Valentine in order to lure Spike, pushing him out of a cathedral window and nearly killing him. Vicious also managed to cause an uprising within the van, in which some people turned against the others in order to set him free again. Given the nature of the show, Vicious does lose to Spike in battle, but seemingly regrets none of his actions, except that he didn't win. In conclusion, Vicious is an incredible leader, although he's very cold, bloodthirsty, and has no issue in killing others for a chance to climb the ladder of success. He has no problems with losing his own followers in the process, using them more as pawns than anything else. He also has no regard for others except himself, which did no good to save him in the end. And although he didn't manage to do it with his own 2 hands, Julia died due to syndicate men. And of course, he's what led to Spike's death. But what do you think? Which Bebop character do you think is the most evil? Don't forget to binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters on your favorite shows and movies. See ya, Space Cowboy.